Hello and welcome to Devil's Advocate. My guest today is one of the sharpest critics of India's reservation policy. In a book published this month, Falling Over Backward, he exposes its intellectual hollowness and its moral two-facedness. But is he against reservations specifically for the scheduled castes? And if the answer is yes, how does he think India should respond to the centuries of discrimination they've suffered? Those are the two key questions that I shall put today to Arun Shourie. Mr. Shourie, let me start with a simple question to establish your position. When you say you're against reservations per se, are you also including reservations for the scheduled castes?
Yes, I think so. And because reservations are not meant to compensate for historic wrongs. They are meant for helping people at the moment.
Well, actually, that's what I want to put to you. The scheduled castes have been treated as untouchables for centuries. In fact, even their shadow was considered to be polluting. Their dignity has been trampled upon. Their individuality and humanity has been questioned. Why do you believe that reservations is not an appropriate way of giving them confidence and status?
Firstly, these are cliches without particular examination of the historical record. Because a passage occurs in something called Manu's doctrine or Manu's compilation, I mean, I have not met a person who realizes or who acknowledges the fact that that compilation was a compilation done over 700 years.
Let's leave Manu's out. Let's leave Manu's out. When you say these are cliches, are you saying that in fact the untouchables have not been treated in the way that history acknowledges?
They have been in parts of India, let's say in some districts of the south. And the real remedy to that has been in modernization. Just one second. In overcrowded trains, Indians make 5 billion railway journeys every year, 5 times our population. In overcrowded buses, are you first verifying what is the caste of the person touching you?
But what happens when you get off the bus? It's an argument in your book.
No.
Equality may be forced upon you in a bus because you have no choice, but when you get off the bus, inequality reigns supreme. It is that inequality that I'm talking about.
That's not the argument in my book at all.
No, I'm not saying it's the argument in your book. I'm saying, I'm countering your position that reservations are not justified for scheduled castes. I'm asking you why you believe that centuries of discrimination should not be counted by reservations.
But you asked me that and I gave you the answer that reservations are not meant and were not meant in the Constituent Assembly as a compensation for historic wrongs.
But they can be used for that.
But my friend, let me answer. Because there are better ways to lift people. Poor must be helped. They must be lifted. That's the duty of society, but reservations is not the way. That's my argument.
Let's come to the better ways in a moment's time. I very much want to talk about them. But for most people listening to this interview, it will come as a supreme shock that you believe reservations for the scheduled castes who have suffered centuries of discrimination are unjustified. Let me put to you why people disagree. Even today, Valmiki graduates are unable to get proper jobs and have to scavenge because they're considered untouchables. Even today, the Mushars of Bihar are forced to eat rats and mice because they're too poor to access proper meat. Are you saying to me that reservations for such people are wrong?
Yes, because the way to help them is to give them jobs and to give them access to education so that they don't eat the damned mice. And the very fact that after 50 years of reservations, they are still eating mice is a conclusive argument against the compassion you are showing.
Except for the fact that they don't get jobs because they're untouchables. That's wall of discrimination.
That's not.
Why then are Valmiki graduates scavenging for a living?
But there are Brahmin graduates who are doing it because of inadequacy of jobs. In China,
but there's a difference. In one case it's discrimination, in the other it's inadequacy of jobs.
No, you just don't let me speak. In China, people are scavenging and eating rats. Not because of caste, but because of 110 million floating population that has lost its jobs.
Chinese eat snails, they eat eels, they eat snakes. There's a different culture and cuisine.
No, just one second. I am talking of the 110 million Chinese who have been dislocated by modernization. You read any Chinese text and you will find that. The point there is, I am all for stopping the eating of mice and for elimination of poverty and giving people jobs, but it is wrong to presume.
Aren't you missing the point here?
No, you are missing. You are not letting me make the point. But for instance, the fact when they are being discriminated against, the persons who are doing that most, who are beating them, who are responsible for the massacres as reported by Mandal himself, are the so-called
But
OBCs
that's
who
not the
own
question
land.
I asked you.
But that's the,
But
that's the question.
no, it's not. The question is this. There is a difference between dislocation because of modernization, if that affects people of all classes and all castes. I'm talking about discrimination due to untouchability, due to a wall of prejudice which has affected people for centuries. Surely, today, modern India has a moral obligation to atone and to recompense for the way it's treated the scheduled caste. You're denying that.
Karan, I am quite, I completely would put aside this so-called moral outrage that many of you put on. Just one.
It's not put on.
Just one.
It's a reality for the people who are affected.
Yes, but the so-called modern people who put on this compassion. The fact of the matter is that great progress has been made by our social reformers. That is the real way for dealing with this. Swami Dayanand, Swami Shraddhanand, Sri Narayan Guru in the south. Just one second.
It hasn't changed the situation
You
on
are
the
just
ground.
absolute. How do you know the situation? Will you please just let me speak?
Look, can I answer
No,
that?
first let me
Name one.
speak. Let me first answer your question. When you assert that the situation has not changed, that is what I call a cliche. You have to listen.
Can I justify that?
No, just one second, let me complete it. I'll give you the documentary evidence. You see what Sri Narayan Guru reported in Kerala at the turn of the century. You see what Gandhiji found in the 1920s, and you compare that with things today.
Compare it with 2006. Name one village out of India's 600,000 villages where the Dalits are permitted to stay in the center of the village. Not only are they banished to the outskirts, but in most cases they are required to live on the south side so that the wind that blows over them doesn't pollute the village. That is the extent of discrimination. They still suffer.
And the wind in all of South India comes from the south, my friend. I don't know where you get this nonsense from.
Chandra Bhan Prasad, perhaps one of the few Dalit intelligent scholars who can easily confirm the facts for you.
Well, maybe he has. We have all got impressions about India. India is a large country. Almost every statement about India must be true. But the south business is quite silly, because if you come to Goa, my friend, you see the wind coming from the south. You come to Kerala, you come
approach the matter differently. Let's not talk about it in terms of moral obligation or recompense and atonement. Let me put it like this. Do you believe that reservations are intrinsically wrong because they lower standards, because they sacrifice merit as a way of giving people access for the wrong reasons?
Yes, they are for all these reasons and many more. For instance, especially when they are caste-based, then they reinforce caste as they have done in the south, as they are now doing in the north.
Well, you can only fight caste discrimination in terms of caste. Leave the caste-basedness aside. Your real concern is that it affects merit.
No, but why? Firstly,
because it
is caste-based. It's caste-based. All reservations in India are caste-based. How can you just put it aside?
Because you're correcting caste prejudice. If the Dalits have been discriminated against as untouchables, they have to be given reservations on that very basis to make up for it.
That was the argument. That is how things were rationalized in the end, when the Constitution specifically forbade caste-based reservations. Then there has been discrimination on the basis of residence. Just one second. There is discrimination in India, it has been alleged, on the basis of language, as in every other society, on the color of one's skin.
Quite right.
So why not have reservations on the basis of color of one's skin?
Well, we don't. Let's not talk about hypotheticals. I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to understand
I'm not talking about hypotheticals. You said there is discrimination on the basis of caste.
It's a fact.
So I said there is discrimination on the basis of skin of one's color. Why not have reservations on the basis of skin of one color? You are not answering it.
Because I'm saying to you that the level of discrimination that has been practiced on the basis of caste because of untouchability is infinitely and incomparably greater.
How do you say that, my friend? Where is the basis for that?
Let's come back to the question that I began with. The real reason, if you're not accepting the moral obligation, that you find reservations wrong is because you believe they undermine merit, they sacrifice standards. Is that right?
That is one of the reasons, yes.
But can I then point out to you that special concessions on the grounds that we are talking about have been granted to Indians since at least the 1850s. Upper castes were beneficiaries. Let me give you an example. When the first college was set up in Madras in the late 1850s, British records show that the pass marks had to be reduced from 40% to 33%, and a whole new concept of third division introduced to help the sons of Tamil Brahmins. If it can be done for them in the 1850s, why can't the same concession be given to the Dalits today?
Firstly, we are in 2006 when the demand for proficiency is much greater. They look at the range of jobs at that time and the skills required for those jobs.
But the problem is the same.
No. If I have just to learn, firstly, if that was the case, it is wrong. Second, if I have to learn typing and you give me a concession on that, as in N.M. Thomas versus State of Kerala, then it is one thing. But if the job that is required is a highly skilled job in a medical institution, and you lower the standards, the consequences are much greater. It's not typing that you are lowering the standards.
We're talking about lowering standards to give them admission and entrance. We're not talking about lowering standards of graduation. What we're talking about is creating an opening field. You have not studied the Constitution. You have not studied the Constitution, in which it has now been provided that standards will be lowered even for promotions. And just one second. And standards have been lowered for postgraduate courses. For reservations. I'm not questioning that the extent to which...
You just said this and then you run away.
I'm not questioning the extent to which reservations have been taken. I'm questioning the position you began with, which is that reservations at the very outset for Dalits and scheduled castes is wrong. I'm putting to you that similar concessions were given to Tamil Brahmins. And let me add, as the Indian University Commission says, they were even given in 1900 in Calcutta.
Tamil Brahmins be damned. I mean, I wouldn't care two hoots for what the British did. My whole argument is that the British sowed many of these things, like separate electorates, to divide Indian society.
Let me give you a modern example. Yogendra Yadav did a study this month in June of 315 key positions in journalistic organizations, and he chose 37 national journalistic organizations, both television and print. And he discovered that not one of the top 315 positions is manned by a Dalit. That is an example, surely, of the manner in which discrimination keeps out people of talent only on caste.
Absolute bunk. I cannot believe that Karan Thapar is not going to employ a proficient person, whether it is for camera or for assisting him, just because of caste.
Karan Thapar is not like 315 top organizations, because 37 medias, including papers you've worked for.
Because it takes time for that kind of competence to be acquired. Journalism is one of the freest professions, as sports are, as entertainment industry.
So you're saying to the Dalits, wait a century, wait 2 centuries?
No, not a century.
You think time is on their side? You don't think they need a helping hand?
Of course they do, but you don't let me tell you what the helping hand has to be, not reservations.
Why?
Because I have answered it 10 times and you keep going back to the same question, repeating the very words. You just look at your own recording.
You've answered it in terms of the moral obligation.
I'm not talking.
No, you answered it in terms of the moral obligation. Let me point out to you the efficacy between 47 and 97. In those 50 years alone, the number of Dalits who, as the result of reservations, went to schools and colleges grew from 1.74 million to 27.92 million. During that same period, the number of Dalit graduates jumped from 50,000 to over 5.5 million. That's an example of how reservations has helped, and you're denying this to them.
You have just picked up a few statistics.
Very meaningful.
Just 1 second. For total number of persons going to school, what is the statistic from 1947 to 2006?
What do you mean the total number?
Irrespective of Dalits, the total number of school-going population in India from 1947 and now. Just
no doubt. I don't know the answer, but I'm saying to you the point you're making is that the percentage of both has increased. I'm saying that the percentage of Dalits has increased because of reservations. Otherwise, the system would have kept them out.
How do you say the last sentence?
Okay, I'll illustrate it by taking government employment.
No, but firstly,
let me illustrate
just 1 second, sir. Just 1 second. Firstly, you did not know the total number of how the total growth.
Do you know it?
No, but
you don't either. You're simply trying to question whether the two have increased equivalently. I'm saying that in fact the reason why the Dalits have increased is because of reservations, not because of general improvement in society.
That is just an assertion of yours.
It's a fairly valid one that most people
How do you say this? then we have two contrary bits of
So
assertion.
you neither accept the logic in terms of morality nor in terms of efficacy.
Yes.
On both grounds, you think reservations are wrong.
Absolutely.
Then let's take a break and let's come back and talk about your chosen way of helping the Dalits and atoning or making up for centuries of discrimination. We'll be back in a moment's time to find out if reservations are the wrong way, what does Mr. Shourie think is the right way of helping the scheduled caste? See you in a moment. Welcome back to an exclusive interview with Arun Shourie. Arun Shourie, since you are implacably opposed to reservations for the scheduled caste, what do you think is your preferred way of tackling the discrimination they've suffered for centuries?
Firstly, I'm not against reservations only for the scheduled caste, but for everybody. Okay. Second point is, yes, if they have suffered that kind of discrimination, and we have got good records of this kind of thing happening in the south, for instance, in many parts of Tamil Nadu, then the first point, the best way is social reform, and these great reformers who have made an enormous difference to India in the last 200 years, as testified to by the Christian missionaries themselves.
Is there a second way beyond social reform?
Yes. Second is economic growth and modernization. Third is find out what is the reason for the poor performance of that child. For instance, if he cannot retain what he learns in class because of poor nutrition, give him 4 free meals a day.
Individual attention.
Yes, absolutely.
Is there a fourth?
Yes, many things. He doesn't have a place to study. Make free dormitories. He needs free textbooks.
Right.
He needs training.
That's all part of
education.
individual attention. But is there yet another measure you'd like to implement to help the Dalits? Because let me tell you why I'm asking you. All the things you've talked about, social reform, economic growth, individual attention, they're very slow, they're unenforceable, they're difficult to monitor, they're certainly not transparent, and in most cases they're voluntary. The reason why people prefer reservations is because they're transparent, they're enforceable, they're monitorable.
And for 50 years you have not monitored them, and you have not even the government.
But that's not the failure of reservations.
You don't understand.
That's the failure of the administration.
No, it is reservations are going to be implemented by whom? By the Americans? In India?
Reservations can be implemented badly. That's not an argument against reservations.
That is the usual argument of 5-year plans. Plan was good, but it's not implemented properly.
But in this case, it's the truth.
It's not the truth. It is an assertion that you keep making. The fact of the matter is that these free lunch programs, midday meals have helped a great deal in reducing dropout rates, in retention of what is learned. We should do that. That is what requires painstaking work. And the very fact that things are not being monitored, I'll give you an example if you please permit me. Recently, in the Standing Committee of Parliament on Social Welfare, there's a report available in May, just last month, in which the Secretary of Social Welfare was asked, you have a backward classes financial corporation. How do you distribute the money between states? He said, sir, we distribute it, madam, we distribute it according to the proportion of OBC population in different states. She said, how do you know the number? He said, we don't know the number. She said, what is the total number of OBCs in India? He said, we don't know. Just 1 second. What is the total number of scheduled caste people? He said, we don't know. If we don't know the number, we don't know the distribution, we are not monitoring who is getting.
It's a little facile to knock down reservations on the ground that the administrators who are responsible for administrating them are fools. That's what you're proving. You're proving the administrators are fools.
Many commentators,
the policy of reservations is wrong.
I'm saying more. Many commentators are just assertors.
Well,
and will not listen
the
to our
assertion
reason.
could be on fact.
What is the
I could argue that your refusal to accept it is based on prejudice.
No, the caste
I may be an asserter, you could be prejudiced.
Could be. The caste people are saying, the scheduled caste people are saying that the benefits of reservations are being hogged by a creamy layer within scheduled caste.
But at least they're getting it. The creamy layer didn't have it 50 years ago.
Yeah, it is impossible to argue with that.
Why? It's a fact.
Because what is the creamy layer?
Once the creamy layer benefited, you can remove them, but let them benefit before you remove them.
But you can benefit the people by having an economic criterion for identifying the individual.
You know that each time milk boils, it forms a creamy layer. You just remove it. Yeah. Each boiling brings a fresh layer to the top.
The reason All that could be achieved. Milk could be made to boil many times over, provided you identify the state policy by the unit of the individual and you identify the beneficiary individual by economic criteria. You would then not be fortifying precisely the types of regressive institutions within Indian society like caste, which you want to get rid of.
Except that the people who are untouchables were not created untouchables because of their individual character, but because of the group. That's why the group is being focused upon.
It reinforces the kind of group. This is Panditji's view. I believe that this has been vindicated by time, that we have reinforced that group identity to the great evil of society, to the ill results of society.
Can I put it to you, this will unfortunately have to be my last question, that many Dalits listening to you will say that he may be a liberal in many matters, but he's a hard-hearted, callous man who simply doesn't understand what it's like to be repressed under centuries of discrimination.
They said that to me when I wrote about Bhindranwale. He's a Hindu, Arya Samaji, does not...
The two situations don't relate.
They do. When I wrote about the Shariat and the consequences of Shah Bano, everybody said he's communal, he's Hindu. And now? So wait for time.
So the verdict of your peers or the verdict of the majority of society is water off a duck's back as far as Arun Shourie is concerned.
I do not know what the majority of society, Karan Thapar doesn't speak for them either.
Arun Shourie, a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.